To the EU qualifier number 6 from the One Nation of Gamers Summer Circuit. About to jump into the second match of the day. I'm Osmo, joined once again by Chalky, who didn't even have time to eat his cookie.
Yeah, my cookie's just sitting on my desk, kind of sad. But hey, yeah, we've got Hearthstone to cast, so the cookie can wait.
Sacrifices have to be made for the sake of esports. But next match is going to be Ostkaka from Root Gaming, taking on LBYS. Now, LBYS is actually he's a ladder hero. I see him all the time. He says he's been legend on every server for the past 5 months, so he plays a heck of a lot of Hearthstone. And Ostkaka, of course, is a pretty well-known player. And Jackie, you've been playing with him as well in the team league, so you're familiar with his decks and his playstyle. What do you think of Ostkaka as a player?
Ostkaka's really good. He plays a lot of Hearthstone too. He not only finishes Legend, he finishes pretty highly in Legend. I think he's got a really high amount of BlizzCon points, like top 8 at least. He's been playing kind of a bunch of different decks recently. I mean, he's been kind of opening back up to Druid a little more, and he's also has a Shaman deck in this tournament, and I believe it is indeed that new faster mech Shaman. So he's kind of trying that out. He's not really sold on it yet, but hey, it worked in this tournament. He's in the top 4, and yeah, definitely a really awesome player. Has really great results. But then on the other side, we have LBYS, who you said plays a lot of ladder, but he's also on team Vicious Syndicate, I believe. And they... Am I correct on that, or no?
I'm not sure.
Maybe I'm not. Maybe it's somebody else with a similar name.
He plays in the practice group Under the Radar, which is like with Kabi and Zixo plays in that, and I think like Just Sam was a part of it as well. There's like a lot of players in that practice group.
Okay, I was mistaken, but yeah, Under the Radar kind of works with them, and I mean Phone Tap, the recent winner of the ESL event, actually practiced with them. So it's much more of a very hardcore practice group, which isn't something Hearthstone actually has a lot of. It's something a lot of Magic players would be pretty familiar with, and it's kind of something you have to do in paper card games, because it's not like you can just ladder up. You know, you can't just get online and play alone. So you have to really find players to work with, and that's something that a lot of you don't have to do in Hearthstone. You know, you can just play ladder by yourself and figure stuff out on your own, but it really does show the success that they've had in the Under the Radar group just by practicing so much together.
Yeah, you look at the track records of some of those players, and they finish so highly in opens. A lot of the players made names for themselves by finishing highly in opens and then doing well in the tournaments that they got in. Phone Tap being one of those big examples. Kabi as well is another player in that group that does extremely well in qualifiers and opens. But Druid versus looks like Demon Zoo for LBYS. And Ostkaka is running Ancient of Wars as well. That's been a pretty common inclusion because it improves your matchup so much against decks like Patron that don't have a lot of trouble, that don't have easy ways to deal with it outside of Execute, in which a lot of cases they're using Execute earlier on in the matchup because they're not expecting it. So,
yeah, I actually think Ostkaka figured that LBYS was handlock. Because he didn't go for Innervate Shade into Wild Growth. He went for Coin Wild Growth into Shade and held on to Innervate, which is something I would expect you to do against Handlock a lot more often than Zoo. Against Zoo, you probably just want to get on the board as early as possible and lock that down. But it actually worked out quite nicely for him. LBYS has a pretty slow start as far as Zoo starts go. And maybe Ostkaka will be able to like Innervate out Ancient of War.
yeah, it seems like nowadays slow starts don't affect the Zoo players as much, just because they have so many sticky, hard to remove creatures and they're running more big threats a lot of the time. That where even if they have a slow start, still in the mid game, they have huge swing cards like Implosion and like Power Overwhelming on your eggs or on your creepers to really turn the tides. And against Druid, those lots of small sticky creatures are really hard for Druid to deal with efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, and it looks like kind of one of the solutions Druid players have to that issue is these huge taunts like Ancient War. You can't clear minions efficiently, so you should just put up a taunt and go face all the time. And that's kind of the logic behind this Druid list and some other ones.
Sounds like a reasonable solution to me. And
Yep.
this is a little bit of a tough turn for LBYS, actually, because he's trying to make it so he puts an efficient amount of damage on the board, but again, a little bit of a slow start. The Implosion's not going to be able to hit anything this turn, but this board is so tough to remove. And now Ostkaka has to just hope that there's no like power overwhelming sitting on the other end that he can use to activate these eggs, because he's going to be sitting here playing one creature, which is probably going to be the Ancient of... I think Ancient of War... He gets punished by power overwhelmings if he plays Ancient of War, but I guess he gets punished by power overwhelmings regardless of what he plays.
Yeah.
Unless it's Lotheb.
Right now, if he clears off the Voidwalker, LBYS will only have 5 power, so a PO would just slightly not be enough due to the Death Rattle kind of not letting you slide into the Direwolf efficiently, but LBYS actually has Implosion and Mortal Coil, which you would need the Implosion to roll for 4 to clear it. So it is actually a little awkward, and he could just Implosion the Shade, trade in his Egg, and leave the Ancient of War alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little risky, though, to just leave out kind of like a 5/9 taunt. Ostkaka could then respond with like Force of Nature to clear off the Nerubian and the Direwolf, and then suddenly you have a 5/9 taunt that's pretty much unanswered.
Yeah, a 5/9 taunt that's with only what 1 power being left on the board.
Well, he'd have the imps, however many he rolls, but
yeah. And LBYS really taking his time here. You can tell he's like counting through, eating his fingers.
Yeah, this is... I mean, it is something that a lot of players basically would commend. I mean, he does end up going with kind of the play I suggested. It'll work out decently, but again, I'd expect to see just a Force of Nature here. Clears up pretty efficiently for Ostkaka. He could... Or no. I think he'll just go face with the 5/9 Force of Nature off the Nerubian and the Wolf.
Yeah.
And, yeah, LBYS really taking his time. I mean, you might as well. There's really no reason to. Might as well make sure you're doing everything correctly.
Yeah, he really needs some extra power on the board. He needs something to sort of activate these small creatures that he has. Defender of Argus is something. He can use that to trade up a little bit, but he's still missing quite a bit of power here to be able to take out this Ancient of War. Even with Defender of Argus and Mortal Coil, he's still a damage short from being able to kill this.
Yeah, he's 2 damage short.
Yeah.
It is the one nice thing about Defender of Argus is it basically at least makes it so that the Druid can't put pressure back on you. Mm-hmm. If you taunt up that egg and the Haunted Creeper, your opponent will feel very bad about attacking into those in the first place. And even if they do, at least they're not hitting you for 5 and turn to the face, because that presents a very awkward problem. If they're hitting you in the face and you can't hit them in the face, it's kind of a lopsided race. But like you said, he doesn't have a way to get through the Ancient of War in his sights, at least. So it's going to be a long journey.
Yes. This Ancient of War is doing work, though.
Yeah. So he decides not to attack with the egg. Makes sense. I mean, it's a bad target for Ostkaka to attack ever, so you might as well make him do the attack for you. It would develop a little power a little faster for LBYS, but...
Well, it looks like Ostkaka is going to draw here.
Yeah.
So he does have combo waiting in his hand, but if LBYS manages to sort of stabilize on the board, then he doesn't really have anything to fight back with it except using combo defensively. And this is super awkward.
Yeah,
he can deny one spider.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think Ostkaka just thinks I have to get through this eventually. I might as well do it while he only gets half the death rattle effect. So it's going to work out nicely for him. Finally, LBYS can get through this, but it's going to take a lot off his board, and then Ostkaka will still have a 5/5. And so it's just kind of a story of if you continually remove the Druids cards and don't get to hit their face at all, the Druid's eventually going to win.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to get ahead. And I mean, Void Caller is a nice start if he can Void Caller something out in the coming turns, but still definitely a bit of a gamble.
Mm-hmm.
Now again, he kind of has to choose, do I kill off my egg?
At a certain point, you have to sort of cash in. He hasn't seen a keeper yet, and after you've spent a Defender Vargas plus the egg, that's you really want. I think you want to cash in up before.
I'm really surprised by this because he could have not Mortal Coiled and just used the egg on the war, and then he could have developed the Void Caller. But he went with a little more of a risk because there was a chance he would have drawn into something unplayable from the Mortal Coil. So now Ostkaka is already threatening lethal with as long as a Boombot and Dr. Boom survive. That is combo lethal, and it's not something LBYS can really respect.
Yeah, and even if he manages to clear, it's not like Ostkaka's really in much danger here. There's not too much power sitting on the board. Ostkaka's relatively healthy since he didn't take much damage in the early game. He can lock out some lethals next turn with Lotheb if he doesn't find a way to piece it together this turn.
Yeah, I think that's actually game even without that bomb hit.
Yeah, he doesn't have his taunt anymore.
Yeah,
and he wouldn't be able to attack into the second Boombot anyway.
Yeah, again, it's something LBYS can't respect. You're never going to beat the combo. You can't trade in 8 damage into a Dr. Boom and expect to win. So I think he played fine. It was just a very good Druid draw with the Innervate and the Wild Growth early game, and a pretty mediocre Zoo draw. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good enough to beat the Druid draw.
Yeah, just doing Druid things, and Ostkaka is going to take game number 1 here. LBYS looked a little bit stunned because, like you said, I think he felt like he played that pretty decently. But he's going to have to go up against Ostkaka's either the Shaman or the Warrior coming up next. And both these players have a little bit different lineups except for the Warrior, but these are all the decks that I'd sort of expect coming in here. Paladin, Hunter, and Warrior are the 3 decks you see the most right now on ladder. And then players have been saying...
LBYS, I think we have a little bit of an error on his decks since we just saw him playing the Zoo.
Oh yeah, we just see him play Warlock. That's right.
So I would think maybe it's the... Yeah, let's check real quick. He has Hunter, Paladin, and Warlock, so pretty common mistake, Warlock and Warrior. He's playing the Zoo instead of Patron Warrior.
Okay.
Which is a little unexpected. I mean... He is playing very aggressive decks from the looks of it. With Zoo, I would expect Aggro Paladin, and I would expect a pretty aggressive Hunter, maybe like the hybrid version, though. So again, kind of meta trending towards that aggressive style. This is a lineup that did make top 4, but I feel like if there's going to be a lineup to punish this, Ostkaka playing the Ancient War Druid, he's playing Patron Warrior. His 3rd deck might be the weak link, which is the Mech Shaman, not as strong against those aggro decks. So I feel like if Ostkaka is going to falter in this series, that's really where it's going to be. Patron Warrior, I would say, is very, very, very likely to get a win off any of LBYS's decks.
Yeah, it looks like Ostkaka is trying to set himself up to have 3 opportunities to win with Shaman because, like you said, the Patron Warrior has decent matchups against just about all these decks, and especially against Zoo. Patron Warrior is one of the classes that deals with the annoying early game that Zoo has the best. Like cards like Implosion or Haunted Creeper are just dealt with easily by all the Whirlwind effects, and a lot of times it becomes easy for Patron Warriors in the mid and even if it gets to late, to piece together lethal because the Warlock's already doing damage to themselves. Sort of the same case with Druid, like we saw. If the Druid just manages to stay even, eventually the Druid's going to win because they'll just combo you out of the game.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised LBYS went for a tap last turn as well. I mean, yeah, the axe is going to challenge whatever you play, but if you don't get rid of the axe, it's going to kind of linger there as a problem. And no matter what he decides to play now, it's still going to get axed. And the longer you leave that axe, the more problematic it becomes. Life tapping really doesn't do anything against Patron Warrior, and it let Ostkaka develop pretty much a free Frothing Berserker onto the field.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, now he's going to go for the Knife Juggler, so it really doesn't make much sense to me why last turn he decided not to play Knife Juggler, but this turn was the turn. It does sort of deny a Despite play, I suppose, but...
Maybe he tunneled in on Implosion combination with Knife Juggler, but against Patron Warrior, a lot of times that's just bad. A lot of times it'll come back to bite you because they have so many cards that love those individual pieces of damage, like Armorsmith, Acolyte of Pain, even Frothing Berserker to a certain extent, as long as the damage doesn't kill it. So, yeah, a little bit surprised that was the line of play.
Yeah, he's going to need a really good Implosion this game, I think. I mean, he does have the Mortal Coil to back it up. That's kind of an uncommon inclusion in the Zoo deck, but it does kind of shore up your bad RNG moments if combined with Implosion. But he's going to need to remove this Frothing Berserker at some point, I think, or else he might just take too much damage. And even if he does, though, even if he rolls a really good Implosion, like you said, 1/1s aren't exactly the greatest threat to Patron Warrior.
A lot of times 1/1s become more of a liability than a threat in the long run. But Ostkaka's going to start to push a little damage here, and yeah, if he decides to go for an Implosion on like the Frothing Berserker, if he rolls a 2, then man, it could just be game over.
Yeah, if he rolls a 4, it could be really nice because then he can also remove the 3/3 with the Abusive Sergeant this turn. And there actually is no, there's no Whirlwind card in Ostkaka's hand. There is a Whirlwind effect, but it's a delayed one. So something like an Ironbeak Owl could help against that, or Defender of Argus. So either way you spin it, it's really not that great for LBYS, but the saving grace is kind of that Ostkaka doesn't really have, he's not going to throw out 4 patrons next turn and say good game. We're not quite at that point yet. It's salvageable still if Ostkaka doesn't draw that great.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. This is big. Oh no.
Oh.
That's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, really no saving grace to that. He will get to remove this 3/3 still, but this is going to continue to buff up the Frothing Berserker. It only gets 1 buff since it was a Divine Shield, but let's see here. You kind of gotta count damage now. Like he has the Unstable Ghoul, but it would be a little awkward to kill it off.
I mean, he could Warsong Commander,
right?
Uncivil Ghoul, interrage his own Uncivil Ghoul and throw it in.
Yeah, that would give you +1, and then you would get +2 from the minions trading. You'd get a Whirlwind on 6, so you get +9 from that sequence. And then you get another +3 from the interrage, so you could get +12, so you could do 18.
Well, you wouldn't be able to interrage the Frothing twice.
Well, you can interrage the
Armorsmith.
First you do the Ghoul, and then you do the Armorsmith, yeah. And honestly, this isn't that great because of the Mortal Coil. And I don't think that's something Ostkaka's thinking about here, is the main thing.
Well, I mean, he's
still ahead. Yeah.
He still is on many draws for lethal next turn.
And now LBYS is at a point where he can't really life tap. So I think with the cards Ostkaka had, that was probably the correct play. You probably should go in there.
Yeah.
You just want to get the damage in. He can put him on never life tapping this game starting next turn.
And that's
it. Yeah.
Half the deck, maybe even more, was lethal. Yeah.
So, pretty well played from Ostkaka. I mean, he got sort of an awkward draw, but obviously it ended up working out quite well.
Yeah.
We'll take a 2-0 lead. We saw this last series, and it did end up with the 2-0 player winning. Again, I think if there's going to be a weak deck here for Ostkaka, it is the Shaman, not because the Shaman deck is necessarily weaker, but because the one place it really fails is against aggro decks. Paladin is favored, Hunter's favored depending on how it's built, and Zoo's probably favored as well. But the main thing is obviously, even if you're favored 3 times over, the fact that your opponent has 3 chances is such a big deal. Like, one of these games, Ostkaka is pretty likely to just draw the absolute nuts, get a nice mech warper start and run away with it.
Yeah, even if you have a 40% chance to win, like each of these 3 games, if your deck was considered unfavored and you had a 40% chance to win each of these games, it'd still be something like close to a 90% chance to win if you're given 3 opportunities. I think it's like 88%.
It'd be... So if you have a 60% to win each time, you get on a 36% chance to win twice, which is then 22.4 to win 3 times. So that'd put Ostkaka at about a 78% favorite if he was 40% 3 times in a row.
Thought it was 88. Maybe.
Little off.
Little off. It's still above 75%.
Right.
Say that confidently.
It's still favored even if you're a pretty significant underdog each game. And like I said, kind of the one thing about this Mech Shaman deck is, regardless of percentages, it has the chance to get that explosive start.
Yeah.
But LBYS going to start with the Zoo. This is probably... I mean, Zoo is one of those decks you don't really need to worry much about your start. You can see he was actually a little distraught that there was a Cogmaster even, which isn't that big of a deal. Like, he has a way to kill it, but you can just tell he was just hoping he could run away with the game even. Just thinking, maybe he just won't have the Cogmaster. It is the only 1-drop that the Mech Shaman deck runs, so it is a little... It's kind of annoying when they have it, because it's expected that they don't have it. A little over 50% of the time they won't have it. And that's if they hard mulligan for it. So when they do have it, you're kind of like, oh, jeez.
Yeah, and the big thing there is when they hard mulligan for it. A lot of times they don't hard mulligan for it.
Yeah, they don't.
They need to mulligan for like cards like Mech Warper and Annoyatron and Whirling Zap-O-Matic and maybe like Urshock if they think that they're going to be in a situation where they'll need a silence early, which against Zoo, sometimes you'll keep it if you have a good curve already.
Yeah, and it is a little problematic that LBYS has to trade so much early on in this game. And the Fireguard Destroyer... It's not going to be the Fireguard Destroyers because of the coin usage and the overload, but he can probably go for Lightning Bolt next turn on something and then curve out to a turn 5 second Fireguard Destroyer. And that should work out pretty well for him.
Yep. And LBYS going to tap here, so he's only going to play 1 creature.
He's getting a little greedy for the Defender of Argus. I mean, Defender of Argusing only a 2-1 isn't that powerful. That could come back to bite him. I mean, now you kind of look at Ostkaka's got a Whirling Zap-O-Matic Lightning Bolt on your 2-1, and then you have to kill Whirling Zap-O-Matic, but you can't. If you Defender of Argus, you just can't kill it.
Yep. And then he's just going to keep pushing face damage.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Wow. Ouch.
LBYS, it's almost as if his actual character portrait is tied into his pain sensors on his body, because every time a big slam hits the face, you can see him like wince. Man,
TJ, that's some Yu-Gi-Oh shit, man. they're in the Shadow Realm.
Oh man.
Well, he does get some taunts down, but the egg's going to get cleared quite easily. I would say we'll see a crackle on the... Oh, man. He could go for just the Fireguard Destroyer and then Doomhammer next turn and then look to end the game with the double crackles. He could go for Crackle this turn and then and push some face damage. Put him to 11 at least.
If he double crackles though, then he can't.
Oh, yeah, no, you don't double crackle. You would just totem crackle.
Totem crackle? That seems
Well, you would
Wait,
totem crackle and you'd get to push 6 damage with your Fire Destroyer.
2 beta.
Okay. I mean, that's the alpha play. You push the damage. This is the beta play. You're playing minions and setting up for your future turns.
I disagree.
You just got a YOLO.
I disagree.
You disagree? Okay. Okay. Fair enough, TJ.
This is the YOLO play.
Well, I feel like LBYS here is going to go for like a Defender Vargas and try and make things awkward for Ostkaka. Like, you could Defender Vargas the Defender Vargas and trade it into the 3-1, leaving behind a 1 health minion. And then that seems awkward on board for Ostkaka to deal with, but the Doomhammer cleans that up beautifully. He'll probably Defender Vargas that Haunted Creeper instead, since he top decked that, but what do you really do?
He's still in a lot of trouble because even if he manages to stabilize for the next couple turns,
I would taunt up the Defender and the Haunted. Yep, he's going to go for that. He's going to trade the 4-4 into the 6-4. This seems pretty good. And it is quite nice. I mean, Ostkaka still... Oh, jeez.
oh god.
He's going to get burned out so hard.
Just Doomhammer and then lethal possibly next turn.
TJ, how lethally is this? Could you give me a rating?
I'm not going to say over 9,000. If that's what you were going for.
Yeah, but how lethally is this? You think this is lethal?
I think it is. Okay, so
a rough estimate shows
how overloaded
this
is he?
lethal. He's not overloaded near enough. He can play all 3
5
cards.
mana. Yeah.
Oh, Leroy!
Okay.
Man, how great of a feeling is it when you top deck Leroy and it's not even playable? It's like, don't need you.
Yeah, I have plenty of damage. Leroy would have been 6 damage overkill. All right, well, Ostkaka takes a 3-0 victory over LBYS, and that Mech Shaman, when it has that kind of start, you can see exactly what it does. I mean, he only took, what, 4 damage that whole game? And half that damage was blowback.
Indeed. Ostkaka actually does have one of the higher blowback ratings of Hearthstone professionals. So,
well, that's because he plays weapon classes more than any other Hearthstone professional.
Actually, a non-weapon class has the highest amount of blowback on average.
Warlock?
That would be the Warlock class, TJ. I see you've studied up on your blowback.
I am a blowback expert. Yeah, well, LBYS, he is going to move down to the 3rd place match to face off against Realistic. So he'll still have a chance to get a little bit extra GEICO points and a little bit extra money. They'll be competing for $50. So that match will be coming up next. And the finals is set. So that's going to be Ostkaka versus the Korean player Irony. So both those players had really strong runs the opening round. And keep in mind, once again, this is the top 4 from the open bracket that took place yesterday. So hundreds of players competed yesterday. These players, all of them had some notable victories. Like I already took out Spider Roger from OU Spider, who's one of the top open bracket players. And Ostkaka beat the Fishu, and he had a couple other notable victories against players that had notable victories, which count as sort of
he was a killer of killers.
Exactly.
He had a hard bracket.
Yeah. It was a really tough bracket looking over at it, so that'll be really exciting. Chalky, of course, won't be participating in the Open tomorrow because, of course, he'll be busy. But I'm going to try, and if you guys want to participate, head over to liquidheart.com. The next NA qualifier is tomorrow. On the right side of the screen under upcoming events, you can sign up for that. And you don't have to be from NA. You just have to have cards on the NA servers. So if you're from EU, you just have cards in NA, you want to participate, go ahead. Your GEICO points are separate, though. Chalky, do you have any GEICO points?
I don't. I don't, TJ. I have 0 GEICO points. But maybe I'll get some. Maybe I'll get a couple. Just to say I had it. Oh yeah, I had some of those.
Yeah, I had some GEICO.
I had a couple GEICO points in my day.
All right, well, we're going to head to a quick break. During the break, make sure you guys head over to geico.onog.gg. You can sign up for your official TSM PC and get more information on the tournament. But next up is going to be the 3rd place match between LBYS and Realistic. Don't go anywhere, guys. Summer Circuit action continues right after this.